Please listen carefully.
Five Fingers from Marseille is a South African film that was screened at the 2018 Fantasia Film Festival, and it is directed by Michael Matthews. Like I said, it is a Western-inspired film that is shot in South Africa with a South African crew. It takes place in contemporary-ish times. It spans 20 years. It's not precise in terms of the dates. The first half of the film, though, takes place during apartheid. The second half, when the characters that we see as kids in the beginning of the film, that takes place post-apartheid, 20 years later. My guess is that it's like mid to late 70s and then mid to late 90s, but I'm not sure in any way. I'm just kind of guessing off the cars and off the general vibe of the time period, although because it takes place in an extremely rural, extremely impoverished part of South Africa, it's really hard to tell. But one thing is clear: first half, pre-apartheid; second half, post-apartheid. So in the beginning of this film, the protagonists are all children, and they live in the outskirts, in the slums of a rural town called Marseille. Marseille is actually the name of a large city in the south of France, and numerous settlements in the New World, in North America, for example, but in South Africa as well, took on the names of the cities essentially where the people that colonized had come from. So within the names of these cities, you have this history and this past of colonialism that is forever ingrained in the country. The kids see themselves as a justice revolutionary type. They're kind of rebels. They enjoy pissing off the cops to no end whenever the obviously white police officers roll into the shanty towns. And one day, something really bad happens, things get out of hand, and one of the kids actually ends up killing 2 or 3 police officers and flees the city of Marseille. Cut to 20 years later, when our main character, Tao, is being released from prison. He isn't being released from prison for that crime. It doesn't appear that he was caught for that, but he became a bit of a criminal. We see him in a flashback scene stealing from a bus, and that's when he gets caught by the police, spends a bit of time in jail, and then gets released. Stop the criminal life, every time I get out they pull me back in, and maybe go back to Marseille and possibly establish a new life over there. As he gets back to Marseille, over the course of 20 years, many things have changed. First of all the white people have up and left, and so the black population has sort of migrated a little more towards the actual city and out of the slums, and there has been the emergence of, let's call it, a black middle class. And at the same time, the old slums are now being run by a fierce, Mad Mask-esque gang. So the film really works along some very classic Western tropes where a sort of stranger walks into town, the town is being run by a local gang, and the stranger sets out to clean up the town. The director and his cinematographer really do a tremendous job of capturing the gorgeous South African landscape. If there's one thing you really want from a Western, it's for it to render that beautiful but also very harsh wilderness, and this really has that in spades. The Western is by its very nature a colonial genre, but by having almost all of the characters in this film be black, bar some of the police officers at the beginning, and all of the characters speak in their native tongues of Xhosa and Sesotho, the director is offering a post-colonial revisionist spin on the genre. The fact that the film can have, like I said, almost the entirety of its cast be black, whether they be protagonist or antagonist, means that the film doesn't have to define its character in contradiction to what is white. Every single character can exist on their own, and that really makes for a very freeing, liberating film. I don't think that means that the director is negating the effects of colonialism and of apartheid, quite the contrary. And it's true that there is a very post-apocalyptic feel to the film in general. For this period to feel post-apocalyptic, it has to have been preceded by an apocalypse, and that apocalypse is, of course, colonialism. It is apartheid. It was a time when civilization only existed for whites. They came, they took over the land, they exploited the people, they exploited the natural resources, and when things weren't good for them anymore, they just upped and left everybody with whatever scraps were remaining. And what you have now is essentially civilization trying to rebuild itself. It's a society that's trying to reconstruct, and others that are trying to assert their domination and profit from the sort of lawlessness that has been created by this void of this post-apocalyptic event. For me, the main problem really came in the last act of the film, especially around the final shootout. It's supposed to be the pinnacle, the climax of the movie, and yet ends up being extremely underwhelming and also kind of a confused mess, both in how it's shot, but also in what's at play for the characters, that just some of them suddenly switch sides at the last second, even though their characters were pretty well defined, and it just seems to contradict everything they stood for and a lot of the themes that the movie was going for. And then there's that last sort of scene that is thematically not very resonant with the rest of the film, that is kind of ridiculous, and I think only exists because the filmmakers thought it would be a cool visual to end the movie, but I feel that it is actually very much undercutting the hour and a half that came before it, and that's really unfortunate. However, I do think there are a lot of qualities in the film. For a movie that cost like under $1 million, it looks absolutely beautiful and has enough going for it that I think people should seek it out, and if you have a chance to see it, then definitely give it a whirl. So as always, thanks very much for watching the video. Be sure to hit the like button if you liked the review, and please subscribe if you're not subscribed yet to keep up to date on more videos. Until next time, see ya!